Alrighty, I should be recording, and let's get started. So let's move to main menu scene. We'll do all of the first three games in one video. I currently don't have a Dark Matter or Old Sins ready yet. I still need to work on getting those up, so let us get started. So what we are doing here today is we are going to be looking a bit behind the scenes at the Unity files for the room games. So if you don't know already, the Room is a point-and-click adventure puzzle game, originally built for mobile, later ported to PC, and the Unity files we'll be looking at today are from the PC versions. And it's a point-and-click atmospheric puzzle game. And it was that was built in Unity, the Unity game engine, and so we've using the UTinyRipper application, we've extracted the Unity files for these games, and this is the base file. So we'll be looking a bit into the behind the scenes of what these games look like. Actually, let's move over to a larger view. So this is the main menu. So we'll just go from in order games: Room 1, then Room 2, then Room 3. Let's turn off grid. So this is the main menu scene. Not a ton to see here. If you turn off lighting, then you can it's a bit easier to see. Not everything imports quite as it should, so some textures don't look quite right. Shaders I had to completely replace since they use custom shaders for these games, which I don't have on my computer, so I had to redo all the shaders and set them all to standard. So this is the main menu. So let's go to this. Let's just get started and move on to the first level, which is safe. So this is what the scene looks like, and these weird blobs will hide them. These are the God Ray stuff, and as I said before, not everything works quite as it should. Which is okay. So when we're looking at this, first thing we notice is there's lots of cameras, and that's what these are. If you didn't know, these camera shapes, these are the game cameras. And so basically, how the navigation of the room works is you're double tapping areas of the screen to zoom in, and then pinching the screen to zoom out. And rather than having one camera, and so the camera system is honestly kind of ingenious, because rather than having one camera that you swipe around and that changes XYZ positions, they have all these different cameras, so they can edit each individual position. And so when you're double tapping on this top of the safe over here, you're really just switching your camera. And so they can edit all these different views of your screen. And we're actually going to hide the cameras for now, so they don't get in our way. So if you look around, let's turn off lighting, although that doesn't really help a ton. So this is what the scene looks like, right? The walls, so this whole gray area is just space that has nothing, and this would just be filled in with black, nothing. And that's just because there's no reason for the game for them to have anything there. So they just fill it out. So the cameras, and we can actually look at that again. Oopsie. Are set to display a certain color where there is nothing. So if we go around, we also notice that there's all this blue stuff, which is basically just eyepiece. The stuff that shows up with the eyepiece, and textures don't quite work. And you can faintly see the textures, but once again, it doesn't quite work as well as you would hope on my computer. But that's basically what all those are. So if we're looking around, and it's mostly the same for each scene, this is probably the most in-depth scene we'll get into, and because it's a lot of the same stuff everywhere. We can see that a lot of this stuff is already shown. Like, so like this key right here isn't there at first. And basically the reason for that is because basically the way Unity works is you have everything here. And you can hide stuff if you want. If you're working on something and you don't want to see this key, for example, or this little door, you can hide that while you're working on it. But basically everything is shown up, and because it's the scene view. And then when the game starts, everything that should be hidden on start, the scripts all run, and then everything that needs to be hidden is hidden. It's very interesting how that all works, and actually it's also pretty cool because we can mess around with all this stuff and see a bit of like, oh, that's not it. This texturing is a little bit wonky here. I'm not too sure why that is, but basically we can see how this is working. All the inner works pretty easily than you would in the game. Just go boom. Let's put that back. This one I did find interesting. We can see it a bit here. Is we have a bunch of these objects, which is our inventory objects that you collect in the game. Basically how this works is these are all hidden, and then when you go to inventory, it just basically sends you to a camera over here. There's a few cameras here that we can see, right? And so it sends you to these cameras. So it'll hide everything except for that and only show that. And then and basically what happens is rather than it showing the black like it would normally for no space, instead the camera has like this this textured background that you can see. And rather than rotating an object like looks like you're doing, you're really just rotating your camera around it, so the camera has a pivot point around whatever object it is that it's looking at, and you're just rotating around said object. It's all pretty cool. So this is the safe level. Not a ton more to see here. So let's move on to the outer shell box, is what they call it here. And let's just hide our gizmos, just the cameras and other stuff. And we can hide the god rays, and here we are. So we see a lot more inventory objects in this game, which is why we have like this long trail of objects. And so right over here we have our table with the box. Actually, let's turn. Oh, crap! That was 2D. So we have our box here, right? And actually, for the purposes of this all, we're gonna go into the not the shaders. We're gonna set all of these materials to be unlit. So that way basically it'll change. If you look at our shader for all these, right now I just have it set to standard. And we can just change all these to unlit textures. And so then we get a bit of a better, more detailed view of this all. That's a lot easier to see. And let's actually just move to our bigger scene here, and let's turn off gizmos. So basically we have our box here, right? Not a ton here to see, game-wise. And actually we can zoom in enough that we clip inside of this, and we can see the inside of this and how well that looks. And for performance reason, most of this would probably, I'm not 100% sure, but most of this would probably be hidden at start for performance reasons, so that way the game doesn't have to process all that stuff. Now there are a couple interesting things in this level. And we can see that over here. If you've played the game, you know that there's a couple spots where like you have to line up some symbols, and you see inside the box like there's this whole bunch of stuff. And there's one spot actually where you see like a big cog room that would for sure not fit in the box, and that's what we have over here. And we can see that a bit over here. The reason this is all white and we can't really see super easily because of the unlit shaders. We'll look at those in a bit. It's because those are all eyepiece stuff, so textures are a bit different there. But basically we have like this spot where in the game where you're looking and you're seeing this like little room with all these cogs turning that would for sure not fit in the box. And that's over here. And basically what they have done over here, and if we turn on gizmos again, we can see there's a camera here that shows exactly what would be shown there. And it's basically a virtual camera. So over at the spot where we would see that, they have this virtual camera turned on that basically just displays, it's like a little TV screen that displays anything that this camera right here is displaying. You come in to see the time, so take a bit, and change the textures to be relit. We can actually see right over here, these are just a couple more virtual camera instances where these two are puzzles that you would line up like a symbol. So pretty cool, I would say. And now let's just move on from this scene to the Ori, which is this spot right here. So if we're looking around, we could see you have like this whole, the star chart up here, and actually there's one at the end of the level, you like kind of zoom out behind the stars, kind of looks like a hologram. That's we have the items just over here, not a whole ton to show in this level that we haven't shown already, so we'll just kind of fly through it, look around at all the interesting stuff. Once again, not a ton to see here. We have another instance of a virtual camera right over here. Again, not a ton to look at here. Now, what is interesting though is, so in the game we have the, actually I'm going to just change all the textures back to unlit so we can see all this a bit easier. Sorry, take it a bit. Just go here and boom. So there's a spot in the game. So in the game, On this level, you cannot do anything on the top here. You can only play around the sides. And the reason for that is you can't do anything on the top until it's expanded a bit. And so this here is a completely different scene, and I think it's mainly for performance reasons. And also, not bookkeeping, that's the wrong word, but like, just to make it easier for development, just like for development purposes, they don't have to do 2 levels in one scene. They can all be separate, rather. And so basically, this whole top stuff, none of this stuff is really interactable, just like these textured 3D models, basically, that we're seeing here. And so if we go to Ori Top, which basically is the same thing but flipped, so now we can see, like, nothing here you can interact. You can interact with, like, see, like this thing right here would normally be like a sphere that you would turn, but now it's not, and now it's just like they've like edited all this stuff so that way it's like the bare minimum just for visual purposes to keep that visual continuity up. Once again, not a ton to see here. If we like zoom in enough, can look around a bit. If you look here, slide these two out of the way. Nope. There we go. And then we have our null sample, which is the green light there is a little bit, texture's a little bit off on that. Not a ton more to see here. But something I did want to show you guys, there's a couple cool things about the scene. And we'll see it pop up a couple more times throughout the games, but basically how Unity works is when you switch scenes, it deletes everything in the current scene that you're in, and then loads up everything in the next scene that you're going to. And when you want to save stuff, there's like components that you can do to remember certain items and all that. Otherwise, everything is just reset. And because of that, when you're switching scenes, it has to load up the next scene, right? Delete everything in the old scene and load up the next scene. And so we see that so this is another instance of virtual camera. But we see that like when you're switching locations and they don't want to load it up, they basically just stick everything from that location you're going to in a new scene. And basically at the end of this level, you go from this little room, it's like a Stonehenge type space, like a box, right? And that's right over here. And rather than putting this new scene and having you load in between transitions, when it's just supposed to be a small transition, they have it be they just stick in the same scene. And we see another spot of that here, another virtual camera spot, but it's really interesting how that all works. So there's one more level we're going to look at here. Not a ton to look at once again because it's all just, I'm not sure what, there's no textures there, but it's not a ton to look at here. Because we mostly covered everything that we can see, we'll just do a little bit of a flyby. Look at some of the inner workings. Something that is interesting here is this little image right here we can see, and it's just a plane, so there's no backside to it. But at the end of the game, there's like a cutscene where you're going to the door. There's some symbol flashes, and at one of the symbol flashes, you see AS, which is right here. And basically, it's not a 3D model or anything. It's just like this little image, and if we were to change all the texture, all the shaders so they're relit, this would be much darker, you can hardly see it in game. You have to really be paying attention. I only found this little thing initially from inverting images, and it was a bit easier to see then. But yeah, really cool. Not a ton more to see here, so we'll exit out of this Unity scene. And we'll go on to the next one, which is the room 2. And we are just gonna change all this stuff to be lit, unlit, I mean, because once again, these scenes are all very dark. And just 1 second, I'm gonna be right back. I'll probably edit this out, but I need to go grab a charger for my computer, which is dying. Okay, sorry about that wait there. Sorry about that wait there. Back, just had to grab a charger. So let's move on. Let's go just to the beginning scene. No startup, I don't think. That's just a UI. I think splash screen, I think. Main menu. Now let's see here. There we are. Okay. Now time to see here, we have some God rays, right? Some UI stuff and our pocket watch. Now time to see here. So let's just move on to the tutorial, which is the crypt. So it's kind of funny because you can see here we have all this like tendril stuff, and I kind of talked about this a bit earlier, but it's all of this is shown at the beginning. And honestly, it's kind of cool just to see like how extensive these scenes are when you're looking at such a small portion of them. It just shows the amount of detail, and you can barely see so much of this stuff. And you see it for such a small amount of time, you pay no attention to it. It's just kind of cool to see that they put in a ton of detail into all of this. Not a whole ton to see here. There are some interesting things, like you never see like black. This is all blackness here, so it's just kind of interesting. There's because the angel's kind of just floating. It's all very interesting, just to look at. I think at least. But once again, there's just not a ton to really talk about because we've talked about most of the same development principles that they've used, that they use here too. So if you move on to the ship, once again, there's not a whole ton to talk about here. It is interesting. They've only modeled for the inside of for up here. Nothing up above this. It is cool how they've once again all this stuff you can hardly see, and there is some reusing of assets. Like those crates are the same 3D model and textures and all. And there's a lot of that reusing of assets, but I think it is cool that they've put in enough work that even here there are backsides to these models. When you're not even seeing back here in game, you can hardly even see there anyway, because of I didn't even know that they had model stairs here. Just because you don't see it, it's all kind of dark. It's all dark and black. And obviously, you can't really see that right here because we've put our settings so everything's unlit. Once again, not a whole ton to really look at and see here. It's just kind of fun just to fly around these inner workings. So let's just move on then, I guess, to the temple. It's again not a time to really see this. It's just nice to look around. Let's actually hide the god rays though, so we don't have to worry about those. It is interesting. So we have, I think, in all, I'm not 100% sure, but I think in all of the levels of this game, the first three at least, and the laboratory, because they all have a font at the end of each of these levels. And I think those all correspond with another table that they have here that was already there, which I think is just a cool little detail. Not a whole ton to look at here. Like, it's all just, a lot of these development techniques that we've seen are already are just repeated here, right? Let's move on to the seance. There we go. So if you look around here, and actually we can hide all these. These are just like little glow bulb thingies that would normally just be like little, they're like just little details that don't quite render right. The glass isn't quite rendering right, but if it was, you could see like there's like basically the London background here is basically just a little picture, little sprite there. A little ghostly apparition of AS, same image as in the room 1. It's not a whole ton to look at here. We can see AS's dead body is right there. A bit weird without the textures and lighting and all that. We have all the tarot cards there. Our chalkboard with its different messages, skewed up textures. I think it is cool because you can't see a lot of like these bookshelves. I'm not entirely sure I even knew were really there. And obviously, these books aren't individually 3D modeled. In fact, you can kind of see the clippings of the textures, but still, it's just kind of cool that detail because those didn't have to be there. And I think that's something that really shows what Fireproof does and the quality of the work they do. A lot of this stuff doesn't have to be there. Like this couch, this fireplace, I don't think either of those were in the mobile versions for performance reasons, but none of those have to be there. And the game would just be fine without any of those. You can hardly see them anyway. But the fact that they are there shows the amount of detail that they put into those, and the fact that they are there makes the game better overall. Let's move on to the boat, the worthless level of the crossing, I think. I don't know. It's fine. And, like, once again, it kind of completes it a bit more, but I personally feel that this level is a little bit pointless. It's short. There's one really not much of a puzzle. And there's not a whole ton to see here. No, it's just, there's like a little bit of a pathway. That just leads right up into here. There's not even inside of the laboratory here. Yeah, not much more to see here. Let's go to the final level, the laboratory. So we see here, this level is actually kind of cool. Let's hide that. There is actually an outside to, and you can't really see it. if we had the textures lit, you could see it better. But basically, here's a bit of an outside to the laboratory. Again, don't see a ton here. That's very. No, there's not like a ton of stuff to talk about here because we've already talked about a lot of it. It's just kind of fun just to fly around and look at all this stuff. If you hide this table, you can see like the actual, hide that bottom part of it too. You can see the actual table that's in there for the most level. But yeah, not a ton more to see here. So let's move on to the room 3. Now there's a couple interesting things about the room 3 that we're gonna look at here. But we kind of talked. Oh, sorry. We've kind of talked a bit. I'm actually gonna close out a lot of these windows for the computer going a bit better. Okay. Let's see here. So let's move to. Let's go to the main menu first. I don't think we really need to look at this unlit. A lot of these scenes are fairly well lit. For our purposes, so I don't think we're gonna really need to worry about that. So yeah, this is the main menu. Not a ton really to see here. So let's just move on to levels. So in total, there is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 levels, kind of. Let's go to the tutorial first. Back in order. So if we're looking around here, so we start off in the train, right, which is right here. The windows don't quite work the way they're supposed to. This just shows the tunnel, which is, I think, where they just have it start off for using as purposes, and then we have like our tree background, which repeats, set to loop. If we come back here, there's a couple interesting things about right here. One of which, let's move just up to here. So let's back over here and let's turn off cameras. Is this little image here of the craftsman? And basically what that is, it's a GIF. Or not a GIF, but it's a sprite sheet of a sort. So basically what that means. So you may not, so for those who don't know, all the characters, for the most part, like the dead body of AS, was 3D modeled, obviously. But for the most part, characters in their games are not 3D modeled, but are they use full motion video for their characters, like the craftsman, for example. And so they basically just record all of these, touch it up in Photoshop and other visual editing programs, and then they bring it in here. And this is how they do it. They basically, the texture would be blank, around them, and then just a sprite sheet, and they just play like a little animation, and they can move these animations around. So yeah, that's just kind of interesting there. Not a ton more to see here. But what is interesting about this level, and I didn't even realize until I looked at this, but it is pretty cool. So I kind of talked about this a bit earlier. And basically how Unity works is when you load up a new scene, all the objects in the old scene is deleted, and all the objects in the new scene are loaded up, and that requires a bit of time for the game to load everything and start the rendering process, right? It's basically what we have here. And so when you have like a transition line going from the train to Grey Home, which is supposed to be seamless and quick, you don't want to wait for not sure what's happening here. you don't want to wait for it to load. So this entire first part of the hub actually takes place in the same scene as the train. And then we'll look at this in a bit after we do the lighthouse, but everything else in the hub is done in a separate scene from this. And so that's just kind of a cool thing. So there's like everywhere else in the hub other than, so the only stuff that's stuck in this scene for performance purposes is in this one scene, right? It's not put in there. And so I think that's just kind of cool. And it makes a bit of sense in the game's purposes, and it's a question I've had for a long time, why you can't do the clock puzzle. Because in the bonus puzzles, there's only one that you can do without going to the library, which is this clock. And basically how it works is it does it in real time, where whenever it hits one of these 15-minute marks, a little switch will pop up, and you can do that to do a little bit of a puzzle and get like a crystal. And there's nothing you can do with the crystal yet until you unlock some other areas. But this is the only puzzle you should be able to do before going to the lighthouse and then coming back to where you can access the library. And basically how it is this clock doesn't work at all in this first go around, in this scene. And I always had this question of why that is. And basically why it is because it's in a different scene. And they don't want to do the work of, it's difficult to get it so that way so the game will remember like what you've done in this scene and transfer it over to the other scene. Because there's a few states that this can be in if they were to do this, where you can solve the puzzle here and then it's transferred over, there's a bunch of states that this could be in that they would have to individually transfer over depending on where you're at. You could have not done the puzzle at all. You could have started it by flipping the switch when it turns to one of these 15-minute marks, and then left it there, and they had to carry that over. You could have solved the puzzle here, that you do after flipping the switch, and then left this open, leaving the crystal there. Or you could have done everything and taken the crystal. And so rather than figure all of that out, they simply just make it so you can't do it at all in this scene. So let's move on now to the lighthouse. Amount I'm here to see just as normal, right? We have our wood table here. We can actually look under here and see all this stuff. Now, actually, I probably should have done this in the main hub thing, but it's good enough to do it here. And actually, before we do that, let's just look around here a bit. Some of this other stuff on the second floor. You have our astronaut stuff there. But the super zoom is an interesting concept of this, and I'm going to set this all to unlit just to make everything easier to see. Just 1 second. So the super zoom, basically how it works is you like double tap on like a aperture with some crystals next to it, and you'll zoom inside said apertures. Like you can go inside a keyhole or inside like a small door. And use that in I think every level of the game, and especially still in this level, they use it a lot here. Come on, it's a lot of materials for the game. gonna take forever. I'll probably cut this out. Skip to the next spot once this is done loading. Okay, it has it frozen in the computer, that's good too. Spinning the lollipop of death. There we go, okay. Set you all to lit. Okay, there we go. This should make everything a lot easier to see. So, what we see here, so we have all these, like, super zooms, right? And what's difficult about them is that because they aren't going to make it so that you automatically, like, zoom into them, right? And, oh, there's some of the crystals. Like, so there is nothing in here. And they're doing that for performance reasons. They're not going to zoom the camera in that small. It's difficult to do. And there's no point in doing it when... Oh, I didn't know there was an outer layer of this. That is actually kind of cool. When instead, basically what they do is they basically just teleport you to a different camera. There's something wrong with this. I'm not entirely sure what. But this is moving me. There we go. Okay, sorry about that. It was just kind of being weirdy. So basically just teleport the camera to the spot you're going to super zoom to. So we go up here, and I'll show that a bit more. It's a bit difficult to find it here, but I can find it in some of the other spots. So we have our big tower spot, right? And then up here we have kind of, sort of, gray home. But I don't believe, I can't remember. Let's go look. We can discover it together. Oh, yep, okay. I wasn't sure, but yes, it is a 3D model. A low poly 3D model, it looks like. It's mostly just texture rather than actual models. And we can see over here we have Greyhenge. Greyhenge is confirmed, I guess, because it's not, because we can actually see it. So yeah. Got a lot of that stuff. Let's collapse materials. And let's move on. We'll go to the main hub last. Let's move on to the next level, the clock tower. Clock tower. Come on. Zoom in to here, and boom. So this is the clock tower. Not a ton to see here, but there are a few things I want to point out. Our basement is down here. Guess it's not really a basement, but so there are a few interesting things about this. Like, why is that like that? Because in the game, basically, there's like a little elevator or there's like a staircase that comes up and you go up that to go into a different room. Well, that room is not right there, just a little image. And it's actually really interesting. I'm not entirely sure exactly how they did it. Ooh. But basically what it is so we have they have somehow, I'm not 100% sure how they did it, but they've made a seamless transition in between as you're going up the spiral staircase to another spiral staircase over here to this actual room. I'm not entirely sure why they did it this way. I'm guessing it's for performance reasons, so you don't have to move the camera around too much, but once again, the basement level is down where it would normally be. So that's kind of interesting to me, and I'm not entirely sure how they did that. But that is just like a kind of interesting tidbit, like how they like trick the player and make a seamless transition. I don't know, it's kind of interesting, I feel. A lot more to see here, I don't think. We have the crow right here. Hey. Yeah. So let's move on to the workshop. The scene's called the Forge, is what the level's called, though. Not a ton to see here, right? If you look outside, the outdoors is an illusion. Life is a lie. It's just an image. We have our little wheel there. Up here we have our water, and we see this a lot, and I haven't drawn much attention to it, but I wanted it right here. Is there a lot like these, like, see, like water splashing? That's not an actual. That's not 3D models. That's not a 3D animation. That's a 2D animation that's either made through a sprite sheet, or it's like depending on what you're looking at, sometimes they're billboards, which basically just turn to wherever the camera is facing so they can make an illusion of 3D. Because rather, it's difficult and it can often look bad, and especially in real-time 3D games, to make like water animation. And it's difficult to make it look good. It takes a huge toll on performance. We have another virtual camera instance right over there. So it's much easier and overall just better to instead make it so that way instead make it just like a 2D animation, just blend it in so it looks 3D. Let's move on to the observatory next, I guess. There's not much more to look at here. Right over here now. Here, I'm gonna fix those so we can see this bit all a bit better. Not a whole ton to look at here. It's just, once again, just kind of fun to fly through. Ooh, I don't know if we've seen that one yet. Revelations 12:9. We'll have to look at that sometime. Someone do that. Not sure if we found that yet. Proverbs 14:15. I don't know if we've seen any of them. I didn't realize that we had a whole bunch of scriptural verses here, which is really interesting. I'm gonna have to look at that sometime. So yeah, we have our Ori here, our outdoor awesome Ori. Not a whole ton to watch and look at here. Something like, and it's really difficult to see all this stuff just with this, like how it is. And actually, I wonder if I move to shaded to the wireframe. But I could probably find it. Because that is something I want to look at. Ooh, that looks cool. The wireframe version of this. Ugh, I can't quite find it. Is that? No, that's not it, I don't think. There it is. Boom. Let's zoom in here, and let's move back into shaded mode. It's really difficult to get a good perspective since it's mostly just sprites. But this area right here, and because it's all wire, it's all shaded, it's kind of difficult. Ooh, that's actually not bad. Although we can't get quite the detail. This here is where all the stars are. You can see some of the sprites here. Sprite. Ooh, that's actually a bit better. And it's basically it's another instance of virtual cameras where you're looking through the telescope and you're looking through all these virtual cameras. And then you got a few different instances of this around, right? What's that? Oh, just a different 3D model. Yeah, for another spot. I'm not sure what this is or where it shows up in the game. I can't remember. Oh, no, never mind. It's just a far off distance view of Great Home. Okay. That makes sense. Oh, this is a good spot to show an instance where the super zoom basically just teleports you to another spot. To another camera. So yeah, not a ton more to see here. Let's move on to the hub. Now this is a large scene, lots to look at here. We come down here, we can see this is like the main area of Grey Home, right? Then there's a few spots that we can look at. The library. I'm not sure, a lot of these spots don't have floors for some reason. I'm not sure if that's just how they're all working out, or I think it's just a bug with the whatever it's called, with the conversion, right? Let's move back here. That's much better. It's kind of difficult. It's hard to see through the glass because it's just showing textures rather than because that's supposed to be see-through, right? Over here we have the glass house, all these whole different things. I think it's really cool how they've made it so all this is basically just like it's very cohesive with how it would work how it would be in real life, like the locations of all these spots, right? And which I think is really cool. Not a ton more to look at here. So yeah, let's just move on to the final scene that we're going to be looking at today, which is Hub Final. Not a ton to look at here. Basically this is Gray, the top spot of Grey Home. What's really cool, I think, and there's actually a couple super zoom spots here too you can look at, right? So we see all this like land, which is obviously not there. This is for all the train. This is for the train, which you can look at right here when you're moving from here to the train. For that cutscene. Here's another thing I thought was pretty cool, how it has like these tarot cards around, which I'm not sure exactly why, because you don't see them in game. I'm guessing, I'm not 100% sure, but I'm guessing it's just a easy way for the developers to remember for like programmers and all that stuff, for them to remember like what path does what. You can look here, we got the inner workings of this whole thing. Not too more to look at here. So yeah, this is, I don't know if I'll do anything more like this, with these games at least. Maybe I will, maybe I won't. But I think it's just really cool to look at and see the amount of detail they stick into all of these games.